We come to the main part of the evening, and I am proud that she's come back again to the Black Country. We did have her come to see us at Grit Screen under a previous banner for a different guise. Yeah. Thankfully, we've now got a new banner, and that being the Tridents. And we don't know what's that again, sorry. And I would like to welcome to the lectern our leader, Anne-Marie Waters.
Wow, hello. Hello. This room brings back memories. I mean, a lot of the hustings events are sort of melted into one over that very, very, very long period. But this one I recall, this one sticks out. I think it was one of the livelier nights, if I remember correctly. But thank you all for coming along. I really am grateful, and thank you to all three of you. It's an incredibly brave thing you're doing, and I certainly can't do this on my own. So I can't. It's difficult for me to express the gratitude and the pride that I feel. It might not be that long time-wise since we were here last under very different circumstances, but a lot has happened in that time. And while we were driving here, I could see signs along the road with For Britain on it, and it's an incredible feeling. It's an incredible feeling. I feel so very proud and overwhelmed. I still sort of have to pinch myself sometimes to make sure this is all real and this is all really happening. But it is, and it's all really happening because of people like Daryl and Samantha and Stephen. So thank you so much. Thanks also, Mo. Mo and I frequently debate, shall we say, the language we use about Islam. I think he disapproves of some of my language, but sorry about that, Mo. But thank you. I remember when that was originally broadcast, actually, and I know almost all of the people on it. I know obviously yourself, Mo, Amal. I know from a few years back, actually, in London. And Nisar, whose story I heard personally, and it was one of the most shocking things that I've heard, and that's amongst a lot of shocking things. So thank you, Mo, for your incredible courage. I think we all come at this from different perspectives, depending on our viewpoint and depending on our sort of backgrounds. But your bravery is incredibly commendable. And without you, we would be in a far worse situation than we are. So thank you very much for doing what you're doing. Daryl, very, very impressive knowledge of Sandwell Council. I'm delighted. I've been doing my spying on Sandwell Council myself today. Of course, absolutely Labour dominated. And I quite like that fact because it's Labour we have to go after. I want to go after Labour. Labour deserves a kicking, an absolute, and they're ripe for it. They're ripe for it. The country is sick of Labour. And if you look back to when Labour emerged, and they emerged very quickly, within a couple of decades of forming, and it won't take us that long, by the way, they were in government. Labour were in government within a couple of decades of forming. And this was under the first-past-the-post system, let's not forget. So the first-past-the-post system is not insurmountable. It can and does happen. And the reason Labour succeeded so dramatically, so quickly, back 100 or so years ago, was because the working class people had no one. The Parliament at the time was dominated by Labour and the Liberals, or Tories and Liberals, in the way that it's today dominated by Tories and Labour. And Labour came crashing through to government because the working class people had nobody. And now here we are, and the working class people have nobody. And this is why now is the time. Now is the time. And it's not about identity politics either. We are giving a message. We're giving the same message to everyone. And everyone, there will be something for everyone in there, because it's a common sense, back to basics manifesto that we have. And I think that's what people want. They want us to get the basics right. If we get the basics right, they'll be all right. And then we can stay out with our lives. Just get our job done, do what they pay us their taxes to do, and then mind our own business after that. Labour is now a party for, it sounds like a cliche, but it's true, the metropolitan elite, the latte sipping, wine drinking, bars, expensive bars across London. That is who they are. And now they've gone over to the weird, loopy left under Jeremy Corbyn, which I knew was going to happen. I could see when I was in the Labour Party. I know, it seems incredible, doesn't it? I still can't believe it myself. God, talk about another lifetime. Talk about another lifetime, it's incredible. I could see it was going over to the loopy left, and this was one of the reasons I got out of it. But one of the staggering, and it's happening really quickly with Labour now, is there the Islamisation of the Labour Party is very, very obvious. And I saw an article in Breitbart this week about jihadis. They are ideological jihadis, and they're standing for Labour. And Trojan horse, you remember the Trojan horse? Of course you will. Out campaigning with Labour, Trojan horse governors out campaigning for Labour over the weekend in Birmingham. The anti-Semitism scandal, the obvious sympathies with any single anti-British terror group on the face of the earth, then Corbyn is a fan. And he can deny that all he likes. We know his past. We also know the past of people like Diane Abbott and John McDonnell, and we know that this is a far left, extreme left, open border, anti-British, anti-working class party that deserves to be absolutely kicked at the ballot box. And I really, really think we can do it. I really, really do think we can do it. So I'm delighted that we have such strong candidates standing down here to give Labour what for. I was also looking today at the promises of Sandwell Council. They have 10 priorities on there. On their website, and they want, among others, quality schools, transport and increased housing. Now, these are their priorities. These should be priorities. But the problem is you can have all the priorities in the world, but if you don't do anything, your priorities are just window dressing. And they don't do a great deal, and the reason they don't do a great deal is because they think they own the council. And they think they own the council, sadly, because we keep putting them in there. It's essentially a cabal. They have been there for so long, untouched. They're not concerned about public opinion. They completely take for granted that people will go and vote for them again. And unfortunately, we probably, or at least up until now, we have done. We have done. And it's the same in Parliament as it is in local government. So just a quick little glance over the folks who run Sandwell today. 14 of its staff earn over £100,000 a year. The chief executive in the year 2015 to 2016 took home £156,942. Now, they're getting good money. This is good money to do a job, to put their priorities into practice, and they're not doing it. They want more and more housing. They talk about we need more housing. Of course you need more housing because the population is going up and up and up. Now, that's not Sandwell Council's fault. It's the Labour-Tory government, the Labour-Tory Parliament, which say they may as well be interchangeable as far as immigration is concerned. But in 2017, despite this being a priority for them, across the area they commissioned 74 houses to be built. And that's not happened either, from what I can see. They've talked about traffic. And they admit that this is another one of their priorities, and they admit, the council admits, that congestion is getting worse and worse and worse and worse. So what are you doing about it? The point is, you have this spectacle. You have this spectacle of people who make these public promises and public priorities, whose paid officers are taking home 6 figures, and then they happily admit to you that they're not actually getting anything done. They'll tell you about all the problems. We need more housing, we haven't got housing. The congestion is going up and up and up. Unemployment is going up and up and up. Schools are at breaking point in terms of places, and the number of pupils in Birmingham is to rise by 14% by 2021. And they have nothing in place to deal with this. All they have is a website full of promises and platitudes and sound bites, and they know perfectly well that they will not really be held to account because they take everyone's vote for granted every year, every 4 years, every 5 years across the country. And local government is such a vital area. Of course, national government is responsible for the mass migration that is causing a lot of these problems. But when you think about it, local government, how important it is, it's got a completely different role from national government, in that it's more involved in our everyday lives. Local government is actually what governs our daily lives. Things like traffic, things like school places, things like our daily life, our getting to work, getting home, raising our kids. This is all local government. So it's so very, very important that we shift. We have a political and cultural shift in politics generally, but in local government especially. And it's local government where we can start to break through. I have every confidence that we will break through on the national stage, but it's local government where the real initial changes will be made. And people are far more generous with their vote in local government elections as well. And I would say to people who live in Sandwell or who live in any of the areas that we are standing, you've got nothing to lose. There's nothing to lose here. Let's do this differently. Let's do this differently. I hear a lot of pessimism across the country about how we can't change. It's going to be Labour, Tory, few Lib Dems thrown in, few Greens scattered around here and there. But essentially it's Tory and Labour that dominate both. And people don't believe it can change. Of course it can change. And it's going to change first at local government level. There is absolutely nothing to lose here. If we just tick a different box, we can really change this. And Darrell spoke about how much power we have in our hands. And this is the most important point to be made in this whole debate, is how much power we have in our hands. We have lost touch with our own power. We've lost touch with the power of our vote. We've lost touch with our ability to actually change things because we've been weakened by an over-dominating state. We've been weakened in our self-confidence, our identity, by mass immigration, by interference and oppression and suppression of our freedom of speech. All of this has weakened us, and all of this has made us believe that it's inevitable, that we have to live under Labour and Tory dominance. We absolutely do not. We do not. All we have to do to make the most profound change to our society, to change the way things work, to bring to bring the people's voice into this thing, all we have to do is tick a different box. That is our job, and it's the most powerful possession we have, is our vote. And while it still matters, and it does still matter, we need to start using it. We need to start using it. And if you're worried about the national picture, don't. This is local government. You don't need to worry about the national picture. You don't need to worry about Jeremy Corbyn getting into Downing Street because of local elections. Change how we do things. Change how we do things, and vote for someone different. Now, I am really, really, really excited about this. I really think we're going to make it. I think we may even give them all a big shock next Thursday. I really think we could. Who knows? Who knows? I'm an eternal optimist, but we may give them a shock and we may give them a bit of a bruising, and I sincerely hope that we do. Before I move on, I'm not going to talk for very long because I do want to take some questions. But before I move on, I wanted to talk briefly about a matter of profound importance and significance, and Darrell has mentioned it as well. And it's one of the main reasons that our party is going to be successful. And it's an issue that people across this country feel extremely passionately about. And it's an issue that highlights and demonstrates the failure of our governments, local and national, over and over again. And that is the shocking child abuse scandal and scandals that are still taking place all over this country, and certainly here in the West Midlands. Darrell alluded to the Sandwell, the 5,000 plus child abuse allegations being dealt with by Sandwell Council over a period of 5 years, which was reported last year, and this number continues to rise. There are more child protection plans. A child protection plan is something that the local government puts together for children in trouble. There are more child protection plans in Sandwell now than any other time in the history of the council. Now, when this, I want to take you back a little bit to 1990. It's been going on a lot longer than this. But in 1990, Birmingham City Council, it was this time, commissioned a report on child rape, or what they used to call it back then, child prostitution. And they didn't like what they found. And the report was whitewashed, and the most significant details of it were removed. And the report told them, and this, as the Sandwell Safeguarding Children Board said at the time, intelligence suggests that of potential suspects identified, 75% are of Asian ethnicity. 82% of the victims were white girls aged between 14 and 16. Now, the woman who wrote this report, who investigated this, she reported this back, and the steering committee that had ordered it told her to take all reference of cab drivers were the main perpetrators, to take all reference of the fact that these were quote-unquote Asian men overwhelmingly involved in this. And that is how long this has been going on. They knew about it at least in 1990. They deliberately and knowingly covered up the identity and therefore part of the motivation for why this was happening, and essentially allowed it to carry on for decades afterwards. And now, in 2017, because absolutely no action was taken back in 1990, the priority was to cover it up. Cover up what's going on here. We cannot have people knowing what's going on here. Because people like this, and these are Labour Council, and it's almost always Labour Council, although let's be clear, the Tories are no better. The Tories have done absolutely nothing about this either in the years that they've been in government. But the priority was then, and still is now, they would rather have children raped than for me to be right. That is what it is. That is what it is. They cannot have it. They cannot have it that people like myself, they cannot ever admit that we were right about this. And they would rather it go on. You see it, you saw it several times when the BNP was making a huge fuss about this all those years back. The police covered up these crimes so that the BNP wouldn't be right in the public mind. This is still what's governing us, and this is local government, and it's all across the country. It's all across the country, especially where Labour is governing. They deserve to be absolutely trounced, and I know we can do it. Now, the media is an issue. Although we've been getting fairly decent coverage. We mustn't be afraid of them. We mustn't be afraid of them. They are difficult, they can be very nasty, and they can tell some very serious lies. We also, of course, have, although let me just, on that, you know, it's getting to the point where they're not doing, they're gradually changing how they're treating us. They're certainly gradually changing how they treat me. You might have seen, I've mentioned this a couple of times lately, that the BBC, the last 2 times the BBC has mentioned me, they didn't call me far right. It's incredible. It's incredible. The last 2 times, they're calling me right wing, which is also inaccurate. But they went from racist to far right, and now we're all the way over at right wing. It's changing. It's changing. It's changing. Let us not ever be afraid of them. We will use them for our benefit when the timing is right. We will use them to land punches. But overwhelmingly, we have to realise that we don't need them as much as we thought we did. The internet is changing everything. Now, I'm not a fan of the internet. I'm a bit of a technophobe. I know how to use Twitter scarcely, and that's it. If anything goes wrong, that's it. That's it for me. It has to be really obvious or I can't do it. So I'm not a massive fan of the internet, but I am a massive fan of the freedom it's giving us and the ability it's giving us to be our own media. So let's not be afraid of the media and use the internet more and more. And also, let's have some good old-fashioned leafleting. We've been putting out hundreds and hundreds of leaflets all over the areas that we're standing. You know, I think if everyone hasn't had a leaflet, at least one, I'll be surprised at this point, because the volunteers that are coming out. I was up in Leeds yesterday, and again we had 12 maybe volunteers. My whole political career, you never get this many people coming out. You'll get 3 or 4. We had street stalls, and there's 11 or 12 volunteers, party members coming up to man them. They're getting hundreds of leaflets out. The enthusiasm is incredible, and that's what's great about when you build a party on absolute passion. The people who join a party like this are not doing it because they want an easy life. They're doing it because they believe in it. And that's what's so great about this new, fresh start that we have. And it is a fresh start. And I was did an interview with John Gaunt on Thursday, and he asked me if I'd had any regrets about leaving UKIP. Absolutely no, not at all. I probably would have been more regrets if I'd won. My life would have been a lot more difficult if I'd won. But my feelings on UKIP, I won't say too much about them, but it's the past now. It's the past now. UKIP were set up to do a job. They did a fantastic job. They did what they set out to do, and now it's time to start again. And I want us to be a new vision, a new inspiration. I want us to inspire people. I want us to build on and absolutely strictly maintain our reputation for honesty, because we have got a reputation for honesty and for plain speaking, and we absolutely have to keep that going. But we have to sell a future vision, and I've started speaking lately about, or started thinking lately and speaking about a post-European Union Europe. I think that's what we need to start talking about. We need to offer people a vision of a society that we want to build. And we need to, it's as relevant at local government level as it is at national government level. And the society I want for future generations in this country and across Europe is a civilized, where the rule of law is upheld, a democratic society where the majority view carries. Where the majority view carries. That doesn't mean that majorities can go around bullying and picking on minorities. We are all equal citizens in this country. But the majority culture, British culture, and I'm delighted to see it on the local leaflets here to protect British culture locally, has to be absolutely prioritised, because people are downtrodden. There's no self-confidence. And this is how governments love you to be. But this is why we have to be a fresh, brand new movement to bring self-confidence back. I want to see massive St. George's Day parades. I want to see big parties for the Queen's birthday. I want to see kids at school taught that every major sport in this world was invented in England. I really do. I wouldn't mind seeing flags. I wouldn't mind seeing the flag flying outside schools. I want as well to get rid of this insidious and dangerous racial division that is driving this country into a fractured, dangerous society. I want us to get rid of what I call the racism industry. We have across the public sector people who are desperately looking to find racism everywhere they can find. They're looking under stones, every stone, to see if there's a racist under there. And if they can't find any, they'll make some. They'll find them, because there's a lot of people making a lot of money out of the racism industry. We need to get rid of it. We need to get rid of it. These adverts for, who was it, that English Heritage of all. This is hilarious, actually. This is hilarious. You'll be fully aware of the fact that non-whites or whites are routinely excluded from job applications. But this one is particularly tragic and funny in equal measure. English Heritage has work placements, and whites are excluded. Now take that in for a minute. English, heritage, and whites are excluded. We have to get rid of this. We have to get rid of this. And this is especially prevalent and relevant at local government level. Local government, especially Labour, are obsessed with race, obsessed with it. They will whip up division in society every opportunity they can. This jobs for non-whites only is causing a tension that if we were just allowed to be ourselves and to tell the truth and to say how we feel and even to laugh at each other, even to, in fact, especially to laugh at each other, we would be a very much happier, more settled, more stable society. This Labour behaviour at local government level of obsessive political correctness, of obsession with multiculturalism, of obsession with denigrating British culture and elevating every other culture is driving this country into a fractured, broken society. And I want accountability for those who are doing it. It is a huge, huge priority for me that police are held to account. When the police don't prosecute crimes, really grotesque crimes. We're not, as I say all the time, we're not talking about parking tickets here. We're talking about the gang rape of a child. When the police don't do anything, and we saw last week an investigation now, an independent police body is investigating almost 100 police officers up in Rotherham over the Rotherham scandal, which all these years later nobody has actually been punished for. And wait and see, wait and see. Even if there are people who are held to, who are punished for this, my guess is that a nice handout and a quiet transfer to another job somewhere else will be the worst that they can expect. Now this will only change when the public can hold them to account. I want it where there's a real accountability with teeth, where local people can actually get them sacked. Local people can get them sacked. There are chief constables all over this country sitting on fat pensions when they've done absolutely nothing at all about grotesque crimes being carried out under their noses. I think that is absolutely shocking and unacceptable. And it's because the people are excluded from the governing process of this country. And we are. We are, in effect, we are excluded from it. We have no real say. We've no say over who our local chief constable is. We have no say over who the chief executive of our local hospital is. And that chief executive will be taking home 6 figures as well, no matter how badly the hospital might be doing. You'll have an A&E closed down here and an A&E closed down there, and the chief exec of the hospital, who has no idea clearly how to run a hospital, will still be taking home their 6 figures. And they don't care for this reason. Until we can have local people with the power to sack them, nothing whatsoever will change. So accountability is a huge, huge issue for me. But here's our chance next Thursday to use an old-fashioned bit of accountability. Our vote. Our vote. I am really excited about this. I think we could shock quite a few people. I think we could shock quite a few people. We are getting, and I can assure you of this, it's not leaders' flannel. It is true. We are getting an incredible response in the places that we are standing across the country. The candidates up north, down south, are telling me that they are getting an incredibly positive response on the doorstep. I was out leafleting yesterday in Leeds. Last weekend I was in Yakeley leafleting. And we're covering enormous ground, and it's getting there. And people that I'd met, we were handing out leaflets on the street, and several people yesterday in Leeds as well said, I've already had it, I've already seen it. 3 separate people, it doesn't sound like much, but it is. 3 separate people came up to me unprompted in Leeds yesterday to shake my hand and say they were voting for Britain. This is unheard of. I'd never, when I was in UKIP or in Labour, you didn't get this. You didn't get this. This is really exciting. This is really exciting because we actually have a vision. We know who we are. We know who we are. And we're looking forward to a post-EU society, which we will only get, by the way, when the EU is gone. And I, again, as John Gaunt asked me the other day, do you think our best chance of getting out of the EU is the collapse of the EU? Absolutely. And God bless the Eastern European countries for giving the EU the repeated bruising that it is giving them. They don't hate themselves in Eastern Europe in the way we do in the West. They haven't. There are two reasons that the Eastern Europeans are so strong on, and I know a lot of Eastern Europeans who just loathe the European Union. And two reasons for it. One, they know communism. They've seen communism in their lifetime, and they can smell it. And they can smell totalitarianism, and they know that that's what the European Union is. And the other one, which I just briefly mentioned, is they don't hate themselves. They don't hate their societies in Eastern Europe. It's an incredible thing. They're actually proud. Proud to be Polish, proud to be Hungarian, proud to be Czech. You're proud to be British and you're a racist. They don't accept this stuff. Eastern Europeans don't accept this stuff. Nor should we. And it's key. It's absolutely key that we start raising British self-confidence again. And that will start in our schools. And that's why it's so important that we keep, and that we know who school governors are, that we keep an eye on them, and that they also are held to account, and that the teachers' unions are reined in and their grubby Marxist paws kept off the young British children. I mean, it can happen. It can happen. And I want people to believe it can happen. I want people to believe it can change, because only that belief will make it change. And again, it's not flannel. It really is the truth. If you don't believe that you can make a real impact, then why bother? So you have to start out believing it can change, and it can. And if you don't believe that small parties can, because I would like to see other small parties coming through as well. I want this two-party state to be eroded. It's undemocratic, it's unhealthy, and it's leaving large numbers of people, particularly on immigration, with no voice at all. It's leaving 47% of the country who want to ban immigration from Muslim societies. I know that's a really controversial position to hold. But if almost half the country wants it, and it's a pretty tough position, then half the country is being absolutely, not just ignored, but demonised and slandered and smeared by every single major political party in this country. That is scandalous, is scandalous. I want us to reach out to that 47%. I want us to reach out to the 70-odd%, I think it was 74 that an Oxford study found, who want controlled and sensible immigration in this country. And regardless of the tough talk that we get, it's not changing. The immigration issue is not getting any better. It's not getting any better. And people like Boris Johnson did a terrible thing last week. He did a really terrible thing. And he's a conservative. He's supposed to be a conservative. But this again points to the lack of distinction between the two big parties in Parliament. He, the Foreign Secretary, Conservative Foreign Secretary, wants an amnesty for illegal immigrants. This is an invitation to the world. All you have to do is get here and this country belongs to you. That's what he's saying. That's what he's saying. We need rid of them. We need real change, and it starts at local government level. We will build confidence. When people see us doing well in local elections, which we will, their confidence will grow. People like to back a winner. And when they see us doing well, they will get on board. I still think half of UKIP is going to come over at some point. I still think we're going to get people from both Labour and Tories as soon as they see our success building. But one group that we are getting, and this is a group that I very, very much want, and that is the non-voter, which is about 1/3 of this country. And I think the most common single message I get is from people who say, never voted before, never been a member of a political party before, but because you're telling it like it is on the really tough issues, I think we can trust you. The most common single message I get from people is, I've never voted before, but I've just joined your party. That is absolutely crucial to us. If you can get 1/3 of this electorate, you have control of the House of Commons. Just imagine that. Just imagine that. If we got every non-voter, it's unlikely, I'm not suggesting we're going to get every non-voter, but if you did get every non-voter, you control the House of Commons. That's the opportunity that we have to reach out and really, really bring change. Thank you. Like I say, sometimes I feel like I have to pinch myself. This is so unreal. And it's like we're on this incredible journey. And I'm just so grateful to everyone for taking that journey with me. Thank you, Darryl. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Samantha. Thank you, everyone, for coming here this evening. And thank you for listening to me. And please do help out with local campaigning if you can. And keep your fingers crossed next Thursday. Good luck to everyone next Thursday. I'm sure you will smash it. Let's be positive. And let's look forward with optimism. Thank you all very much for coming along. I shall take some questions now. Thank you. Okay. Hi. Sorry, I'll let you do that, Darryl. Sorry.
Mo was talking about the difficulties of in the Muslim community of Muslims who want to leave Islam, and the fear and the oppression and all the rest of it. I wonder what you think about the difficulties for Sikhs and Hindus as well, because I feel that they also have difficulties in being able to speak out against Islam through fear of perhaps reprisals against their temples and religion. I mean, the gentleman over there talked about the golden rule of religion, and I do feel that with Sikhs and Hindus that's what you have. You know, it is a do as you will be done by kind of thing. Anyway, my point is to try and again sort of minimise this aspect of us being blanket treated as racists, to try and find a way of engaging with Sikhs and Hindus more to encourage.
Yeah, please do. Yeah.
Because
could just make a point on that one. We invited the Sikh youth today. We've been talking to the Sikh youth locally, and because they've got their huge Mela today where they've got a stand, they weren't able to send a representative. So we are talking to the Sikhs, and we've had some shocking stories about things that have happened locally, where girls have actually been kidnapped by some Muslim grooming gangs, and the Sikhs have had no help from the police. And what they've basically done is they've gone out there in old SAS style, and they've done and got the girl back and taken them back to the Gurdwara for safety. So locally in Sandwell we are trying to engage a lot more with the Sikhs, but one of the problems that we have had is that the Gurdwaras have been predominantly Labour controlled. But we are looking to do that, and we would have had somebody from the Sikh community here today if it wasn't for the fact that there was a huge Mela.
Can I just finish that point about, because you said about, I think 82% of the victims are white girls, so that presumably means that quite a large number of Sikh girls have been groomed.
Or Muslim girls. I mean, it's not unheard of.
As I say,
victims as well.
But trying to get it into a context that people don't talk about. I get very annoyed when they talk about Pakistani rape gangs. You know, that the vast majority, we know where they're from. And I'm just trying to sort of see how we can bring this together so that we've got more support from non-white people of different faiths and no faith.
I think it's definitely going to come because it's no one can speak negatively about Islam. It doesn't matter what demographic group you come from. As Mo knows, being from the Pakistani community himself, he can't do it either. We have several ex-Muslims in the party who can't speak about Islam. It's across the board. It's across the board, and there's several things going on. One is that we have a increasingly active Imam, sort of Muslim Council of Britain, Imam Council of Imams, all these different Muslim groups getting very, very active in politics and getting more and more influential, particularly through the Labour Party, and they are demanding silence on Islam and getting it. And they're getting it from Labour and from the Tories, and the Tories are talking about criminalising Islamophobia. And Parliament is asking groups like MEND, known to be stacked to the rafters with Islamists and jihadis, and they're going to be the ones to define Islamophobia. so that the government can outlaw it. So that it's a specific Islam issue, that Islam is a dominant force. And it's no different here than it is anywhere else. It's a dominant force, and it's seeking to dominate. And its activists are seeking to dominate. So nobody can speak about Islam, including Hindus, Sikhs, Jews, anybody. So I think there will definitely come. But I have, the Sikh youth group have been in touch with Tommy Robinson in the past, for example. So they're not afraid of this far-right rubbish. And they're not afraid either to go out and protect their daughters. And we, if whites had done the things that Darrell has described, when they just went out and rescued the girls. When on the odd occasion when white people have tried to do that, the police have arrested them. And this isn't tabloid hype. It's true. It was in the J report itself that a father was arrested for trying to get his daughter out of a house. It's white people are in a particularly difficult position. But to get on to your question I absolutely do intend, one of the things that I'm focusing on now, and the party has appointed a chairman now to look after the running of the party so that I can do more getting around the country and speaking to people. And I'm very, very keen to get in to talk to Hindu and Sikh groups, to Jewish groups, to Christian groups, to various, to farmers groups and others, but ones that are relevant to Islam. It will happen, because it's becoming too obvious. We can see it, so can Sikhs, so can Hindus, so can Jews. It's going to happen, it's going to change. But there's a lot of fear. I think part of I discussed this last week on a webcast, part of the problem that other minority groups have in getting on board with us is the smearing by the media. They do believe us that we're far right, and a Jewish lady who's on our committee, I'd spoken to her about it, and she said, well, a lot of Jews are worried that if you are far right, then if they elect you, if they support you on the basis that you oppose Islam, they're worried that they're next. So this is a huge problem. But we will have to approach it in the same way we approach everything else. I will seek out audiences with as many people, different types of people as I can. But the core message has to remain the same, and everyone will hear it in the same way. Islam affects everybody. And particularly, actually, I find distaste, shall I say, for Islam is particularly pronounced often among Hindu and Sikh communities because of the history of India. And the history of Islam in India. So they're an absolutely ripe market. We'll get them. But there is fear of the far right label. But that, as I say, is being pushed away as well. It'll happen. It will.
Gents over there with a cap.
I heard you at the Democratic Football Lads Alliance march in Birmingham, and that, to me, was like a tipping point in Birmingham. There was also the Football Lads Alliance march in London, where there was over 70,000 who's gone. Now, what we need to do is sacrifice. We have the money, we have to sacrifice and be members of For Britain, yes. Because at the end of the day, we are for Britain. My children are growing up in this country, my children's going to have children, predominantly we men and we women. There's a bit of a mixture here. Mo has got more balls than everybody put together in this because of what he's done. The sacrifice he's made coming out of Islam. He could have been an apostate. He could have just left, but he's gone to be a Christian. I'm a Christian, and I have this every day at work, the difference between Christianity and Islam. But what we all need to do is buy a Quran. Know who the enemy is. And then when we've done that, I've got a Quran, I've got numerous Bibles, I can argue the toss with them. But there's, I was posting and I was going door to door with leaflets for Brexit. Now there's a big march starting up in June in London, and we need to be there by our thousands and our tens of thousands and our hundreds of thousands, because the media can't ignore that. I agree with you as far as I watch you on YouTube, I watch Tommy Robinson on YouTube, I watch Jay Smith on YouTube. There's a lot of good stuff there that the normal media won't show you. But obviously we need to, at the end of the day, sacrifice and be proud that we're British. I'm proud I'm English, and I'm not going to turn around and allow this country to be taken over by people. All they want to do is to change our ideology. It isn't right.
Yeah. We certainly do need to be proud of this country. This is key. Positive messages about this country need to be taught in schools, and they need to be celebrated publicly. And the public space has to be anglicised. We must anglicise the public space. We shouldn't have 3 or 4 different languages in hospitals. It should be English. Or Welsh, obviously, in Wales. We need to. This is part of what will bring pride back. But you're right as well. We have to sacrifice. We do. But look what we have to sacrifice. We're in a really comfortable position. When you think about the generations before us, and not that many years ago either, what people had to sacrifice. In 1914 to 18, they were in filthy trenches fighting. They were fighting. They were coming onto the beaches of Normandy a few decades after that. That was sacrifice. That was real sacrifice. Now we have to speak. That's all we have to do, is speak and tell the truth. That's our job. And while it's relatively we're not in trenches, and we're lucky not to be in trenches, it is relatively difficult. But in comparison to what other people have fought for, and one of the reasons that it breaks my heart to see the country change in this way is because it renders the sacrifice of generations before us just null and void. It's almost, you see those old soldiers still feeling, with their medals and still feeling proud and for what they did for the country, and we're throwing it back in their face. We're completely betraying them. We're completely betraying them. They fought totalitarianism, and they had to really fight it. They had to really sacrifice to fight totalitarianism in Europe. And now we're inviting it in and giving it an elevated status. It's a complete betrayal. And furthermore, when we sent young chaps out to die in Iraq and Afghanistan to ostensibly to fight this ideology, we were betraying those soldiers as well by allowing that ideology, not just status here at home in Britain, but special privileged status, while young British chaps are dying or losing limbs in the dirt at the other side of the world, ostensibly to fight these jihadis. We're allowing the jihad to take root right here in Britain and to dominate culture, politics, everything, every aspect of our lives. It is seeking dominance, and it's rapidly, rapidly getting it. It is a complete betrayal of everyone who fought for this country. So you are right, we need to sacrifice, but all we have to do is speak. It's difficult, it is difficult, and people will call you names, but we're not in a trench. We're not in a trench with bullets flying over our heads. It's relatively easy in comparison to what others have done. So we have to do it. We have to do it.
The gent in the blue check shirts. Thank you. Thank you.
Hello, Anne-Marie. I'm a For Britain member.
Thank you.
I've worked and lived in London, Greenwich all my life. And for the last 5 years, we moved and lived in North Shropshire. So we came here today just to support you guys here. My question is, I'd like to see the end of the EU. Is there any talk or connections with others in Europe that are looking or thinking the same way as you?
Yes.
Because it's only until people come together, like the man said there about you need to join For Britain to make to make it work, and obviously with the EU you need to join with other people in the EU. So.
I had a meeting with an MEP. I won't tell you who it is to protect their confidence. But I had a meeting with an MEP recently who requested to meet with me just because of this how we talk about the EU, and our policy essentially is to get rid of it altogether. Really excited by this, completely agrees with me, and told me that there is a growing effort, a growing belief in that, yes, this is the only way we're ever going to get out of this. If you look at Brexit, I've gone from Brexit probably won't happen to Brexit won't happen. That's it. My view has shifted along in the last few months. it's quite painfully obvious what they are doing, is dragging this thing out and dragging it out and dragging it out. And what we may get is a Brexit in name only. And it will make very little difference. One thing, they will sneak in there, no matter whether they sneak it in through a new customs union or whatever new kind of unions they come up with to replace the customs union, because you can see that that's where the fervour is now on the EU debate. It's all about the customs union. And you can see the House of Lords wanting to push in the direction of staying in the customs union. The customs union doesn't mean freedom of movement of people, but it will do. It will do, because that's the key. That's the absolute priority for the European Union, is freedom of movement of people, because you destabilise countries, and what they also mean by freedom of movement of people is people coming in from the outside of Europe, and that is their top priority. So it'll make little to no difference in the end, is my opinion on it now. And to get back to your point, this MEP has put me in touch with others who are feeling the same way. It is bubbling up. It is bubbling up from below. I am in Belgium next weekend, meeting a senator there who agrees with my position on this and other things. And I think 2 or 3 weeks after that, I'll be speaking with what is in French. I won't pronounce it in French. I'll give you the English version. The French European Council of Resistance. And they have been set up in Paris purely to bring people together from across the European Union with the aim of bringing it down. That idea is going in traction, because they know the only way out of this is to get rid of it altogether. And we have to have a positive message of what happens after it. People need to be clear about what happens if we get rid of the European Union. First thing they have to do, once again, is believe it can be done, because it can. It can. This thing is actually a mess. I mean, their books are never audited. It's corrupt from top to bottom. It's actually a mess. And it's quite a weak mess. And it's creaking. It's creaking. And I think we could push it over. And we need to we need to be a lot more like the Eastern Europeans and start defending and believing in our countries again. And it can be done. But there is a growing movement, and particularly among young people. Now they might, which is obviously really positive, and it might. I'm hesitant to mention them, but I will. As a demonstration of the young people, as identity movements across Europe are massively growing, and their idea and their intention and their aspiration is also to bring down the European Union. So it's becoming a more and more commonly thought of proposal. And as I say, we need to think about who we are. Who are we when we get rid of the European Union? It needs to be clear. We are a group, we are a continent, we are a group of friends and neighbours who will work together on common issues, who will trade together, who will visit each other's countries on holidays, and of course live in each other's big cities. But we will not have a porous external border to the Middle East and Africa. We will not be governed by an unelected, unaccountable bureaucracy. We will be a group of democratic nation states, of freedom, of free people, of accountable government, and we will be friends and neighbours, and we will look forward to a Europe that is the best of Europe's past combined with the best of its present. We will take the good bits from the past, revive European cultures which have been around for thousands of years, beautiful ancient cultures. We will revive them and we will respect them and get Europe's identity back, and then be a proud, peaceful, safe continent without half the world thinking they have the right to be here. They don't.
I'm going to be selfish. I'm going to ask a question. Now, I've answered this particular question to different people, but what's been happening is that Gerard Batten's come out talking about Islam more so than anybody in UKIP's ever done previously. And so what we're getting is, what's the point in joining for Britain when Gerard Batten's saying all the same things now? And I've explained my position with UKIP, the MEPs, the rats in a bag, and the NEC. What would you say?
Gosh. People like asking me this question, I think. Okay. Jared Batten is fairly clued up on Islam. There's no doubt about it. But let's stand back and have a look at the past of the UKIP and Islam issue. Now, for 20 odd years, UKIP sidelined and excluded people who had ever been a member of or associated with, for example, the BNP or the EDL. They simultaneously accuse other people of causing division. Now, let me just mention quickly about the BNP and the EDL. I believe that we need to judge people on their own individual merit. And I would in no way advocate or propose a ban on people who were once involved with the BNP or the EDL. Now, I understand that the BNP and the EDL are very different organisations for a start, and I do understand that the BNP had racist policies. It was a racist party. Black people weren't allowed to join. That's a racist party. But that doesn't mean that every individual in the BNP was a racist, or either you have people who had nowhere else to go. I remember 1 million people voted for the BNP at its height. I will not tell that 1 million people you're not wanted here. We need to be including people and not excluding them. And we will judge everyone on their own individual merit. So what they did, first of all, by excluding the EDL, what they did was send a message to the country, because the EDL was founded on opposition to Islam. It's got no racist past, there's no racist policies there. It was founded on opposition to Islam. So it was very, very different to the BNP for a start, and to the National Front and to other organisations like that. Yet UKIP put them all together and barred them. So what it did with that, as soon as the EDL was born, while the EDL was highlighting things that needed to be highlighted, and I still believe that if the EDL hadn't highlighted a lot of these issues, they would never have been talked about. The EDL did incredible things, and they deserve to be credited for it. But UKIP completely excluded all of those people and told, more importantly, gave a message to the public that yes, if you speak negatively about Islam, it is unacceptable, and we will categorise you in the same arena as the BNP or the National Front or actual racist groups. That was enormously, enormously damaging to people like myself, because it told the public that yes, even UKIP, who was supposed to be the bastion of politically incorrect, the fight back against the PC brigade and the PC agenda, even UKIP was calling us Nazis and racists for opposing Islam. Incredibly dangerous. And what's more, Jared Batten, in an interview with Tommy Robinson last week, reiterated it. Yes, the EDL is still a problem. They still see the EDL as a problem. He called BNP racists. We don't want racists in our party. Well, fine, it was a racist party, but not the 1 million people who voted for it might not be. And you judge them on their own merit. And meanwhile, so I know that what I'm trying to say is nothing has changed. For 20 years, UKIP excluded and sidelined anyone who was critical of Islam, and now suddenly they are putting on this facade, trying desperately for relevance by cuddling up to Tommy Robinson. And I've got to say this is absolutely nauseating to me, and you'll probably understand why it's nauseating to me. I was told by UKIP bods not to be photographed with Tommy Robinson. I essentially lost I was on the London Assembly list for elections, and I did step down, but I stepped down because I knew they were going, I jumped before I'm pushed. And I knew, and I was told it was because I had been in the papers the previous day being photographed next to Tommy Robinson and Paul Weston. Now I'm seeing the actual individual who told me not to be photographed with Tommy Robinson being photographed with Tommy Robinson. It is absolutely nauseating. But let me just say this. I don't trust people who change their tune. I don't trust politicians who suddenly find interest in an issue. And I don't want to get personal, but I will go back just to the leadership election, when Henry Bolton, who had nothing at all to say about Islam until he heard the applause I was getting, suddenly became very interested in Islam. Then he tried to get me removed from the ballot paper, and then he won by quite a significant margin. That tells me all I need to know. And finally on this, Gerard Batten is still petrified of the media. He repeated this again to Tommy Robinson last week. The UKIP's is absolutely steeped in fear of the media. And they still believe that the media is their biggest problem. Their biggest problem is their fear of the media, not the media itself. There are millions of people out there who absolutely loathe the mainstream media, and they have no one in politics representing them. Batten is still terrified of them. And he's also producing politically correct lines, such as, we are not against the people, we're against the ideology. Now let me be, I know this is controversial, but people don't buy this. People don't buy this. You cannot separate ideology from people in such a convenient way. It's a cop-out. It's a cop-out. The ideology will not kill you. People following it will kill you. Ideology did not blow up Manchester Arena. People following the ideology blew up Manchester Arena. That is a cop-out and a politically correct, and he still hasn't mentioned Muslim immigration, because he's copping out of that as well. We're completely different. We're completely different parties. And as I say, I am looking forward to the future. We've got years and years and years ahead of us. UKIP did a fantastic job. The public's mind, their job is done. In the public's mind, their job is done. Their name even suggests that they are single issue, whereas our name is absolutely perfect for the future, because this is what we're doing it for. This is what we're doing it for. We are for Britain in the new era that is coming. An era of change is coming, and we are going to be what is standing there to represent the decent, ordinary British majority. That is who we are.
Yeah. Quick say, I've seen the quick speech you gave about the House of Lords and what could it be replaced with.
Yeah.
I was just wondering if you think Lord Pearson has any influence over the other members, because he seems to be the only one that's going to speak out.
Yeah, it doesn't seem so. I mean, Lord Pearson is one of the people who has supported me in the past. He was actually my referee the first time I stood for Parliament for UKIP. He is usually met, if you look at the records of the debates whenever Lord Pearson raises Islam, he's usually met with boos and declarations that this kind of rhetoric has no place in our Parliament. What? So there are things we can't talk about in Parliament? They've decided that there are things we can't talk about in Parliament. He gets the usual nonsense answers. I remember after Lee Rigby, he asked, David Cameron made the most extraordinary statement that this had nothing whatsoever to do with Islam, despite the fact that the killers had been quoting the Quran and telling us in plain English, right there, on camera, blood all over their hands, we did this, and quoting the Quran. But still it had nothing whatsoever to do with Islam. Unless the Quran has nothing to do with Islam, which is probably the case nowadays. Islam has nothing to do with Islam, from what I can see. But he still, Lord Pearson went to Parliament and said, how can the Prime Minister make this claim? So matter-of-factly make this claim. And he was met by Baroness Worsey. Who else? Who told him that terror has no religion and these people are not Muslims, and you get a big hurrah from the House of Lords to this PC victory, and poor old Lord Pearson is left licking his wounds again, and he'll go off and find another question to bring back so he can get another politically correct answer from some token person wheeled out, and then there'll be a hurrah for PC in the House of Lords as well, just as there is in the House of Commons. So he's great. But he's not actually having any impact. They're not listening to him. But it's important to have him there. But again, I actually think they're still avoiding getting right to the issue. They're still trying to tiptoe around it. They're sort of trying to make it about integration generally. rather than bring it down to Islam. And they did this in 2015 with the integration agenda, and they were made fools of. They were made fools of. They wanted to ban the burqa. And then on national radio, they end up talking about vitamin D and being made fools of. Because the fact is they don't know the arguments to ban the burqa. You cannot argue against the burqa or against Sharia councils unless you're willing to criticise Islam. And that means criticising Muslims. Not all, as we know, but it does mean criticising Muslims. And they're just not willing to go that extra mile and actually get into that nitty-gritty. So in answer to the question, not a great deal, but I'm still grateful for him.
Monica?
Right, I'm an ex-UKIP member. I only came across for Britain. I haven't heard on the media or anything when I got an invitation to come to this talk. So I thought I'd look you up and read all about you. So I've read your manifesto and I've read what you're for, right? And actually, it actually made me quite cross, quite angry, rather than anything else. Because from what I can see, the country is crying out for a party that not just listens to the people, but acts on what the people's will is. For instance, people didn't want to go and have England support America bombing Syria again. Right. They are totally opposed to war, right? So the thing is, I look at your site and what you stand for, and there is nothing that makes you stand out from the other two parties. Really, I'm really sorry to say this, because the thing is, you don't even put how you are going to change things. I know you mentioned that we have to make changes at local government level, which is, like you said, a bit different from national government. But I haven't read anything where you will change things. For instance, as an example, you said you would welcome smaller parties. That's great, sort of. But we've got to first pass the post system, so that is a waste of time for a start-off.
No, it's not.
Because unless that is changed, that system is changed, the small parties won't have a voice, will they?
Well, not necessarily. We have 10 policy areas that the members of the party are going to decide on. And this is going to happen straight after these elections for the National Manifesto, which we will launch at our first conference in September. One of the things that I want people to vote on is whether or not we ought to campaign for proportional representation. Now, I had suggested that we should campaign for proportional representation, and a lot of people came back to me saying, actually, no, we like the first past the post system, and we're selling ourselves short if we think we can't succeed under it. I would disagree with you entirely that we're anything like the main parties. First of all, we want to bring down the EU. Secondly, we want to talk about ending immigration from Muslim societies. We are very, very frank and open about things that other parties will not touch. And I think that is our unique selling point. We don't deal in politically correct sound bites. We don't run scared from the media. And that is the change. That's the change. We are the change in the way we behave, in the way we speak, in our priorities, in the way that we want to speak and respond to the majority. That's the change. But I'd completely disagree that we're no different from any other party. It's quite the first time anyone's ever said that to me. But the first past the post thing is an interesting one. To call it a waste of time seems bizarre to me. If you look to 2015 in Scotland, and you look that Labour didn't lose 1 or 2 seats to the Scottish Nationals, they lost all of them, bar 2, I think. Labour was wiped out in Scotland in 2015 by the SNP under the first past the post system. We do have devolved assemblies around this country that are not first past the post, and something I want to get on to soon after we do the manifesto is to get up to Scotland. And start getting activity going on there to get people into the assemblies, to get people into the Scottish Parliament and to the Welsh Assembly. To call for, first past the post is difficult, but as I said earlier on, Labour went to government within a couple of decades under the first-past-the-post system. The Scottish Nationals wiped out Labour under first-past-the-post. Even the Greens have an MP under first-past-the-post. I think a lot of people seem to think that if UKIP couldn't crack it, then nobody else can. Well, I reject that, actually. I think UKIP was not the right party for it. Farage was obviously brilliant at what he did, but the message of UKIP was never national government. The message of UKIP, and they were happy with this status, to provide a measure of public opinion on Brexit. It wasn't the right party. It wasn't the right time. I think timing is everything. Message is everything. We have a much wider message for the country than UKIP had, and I'm, you know, again, the idea that if UKIP couldn't make it, nobody can, is simply not true, because small parties have produced results under first-past-the-post. I don't know what way the members will vote about the proportional representation. Whichever way they do, I will, of course, argue for as best I can. But I would never. It's this negative belief that it can't be done that actually holds us back. It is this negative belief that it can't be done. The reason we are stuck in a rut of Labour Tory is because whenever people, well, what can we do? What can we do? It's first past the post. What can we do? That's the first thing that has to go. First thing that has to go. We can do it.
I think we'll just take 2 more questions and then we'll draw the formalities of the meeting to a close. Albert?
If you don't get past first past the post system and you forget that, what are your thoughts on voter identification and postal voting?
Oh, this is a huge priority, and this I'm personally putting in to the full manifesto for September. I'm personally putting it in. It has to go in. Postal voting should be abolished for all but absolute exceptions. So for elderly or disabled people who physically can't make it to the polling station, and we want to know that. We want to know that. Postal voting has to go. It is absolutely common sense to turn up with ID to vote. It's common sense. You need ID for everything. You need ID for a bank account. What's wrong with having ID to vote? And they're too, well, you know what? You know, of course, the real racism of Labour is exposed in there, because of course it's Labour who is shouting about voter ID, because of course Labour depends on corrupt multiple votes. It also depends on the imam block vote, where the local imam tells everybody how to vote. And several times, it seems, people can vote 2 or 3 times. The imam can order people to vote 2 or 3 times for Labour. It's an incredible system they've got going on. And Labour does not want that messed with. There's only 2 people who would object to, 2 types of people who would object to voter ID. One is corrupt, who is depending on corrupt votes and wants to keep that corrupt system in place. And the other is the racist, patronising racist, who thinks that somehow black people don't have ID. And there is we will alienate and sideline ethnic minorities with voter ID. There's this crass assumption, isn't there, that ethnic minorities are all uneducated or too chaotic or can't possibly expect ethnic minorities to have ID, to be responsible enough to have it. That is the implication. It really is. It really is the implication. And then, of course, we run into the transgender issue, where people might not have an ID with the right gender on it and this kind of thing. Nonsense. Nonsense. Everyone is able to have an ID, and you will bring it along. Oh, and by the way, you wouldn't know it, but you're supposed to be a British citizen to vote in the general election. Did you know that? You can. I mean, I think people who live here should be able to vote in local elections. But the general election, the law is that you're supposed to be a British citizen to vote in it. Every Tom, Dick and Harry votes in the general election. No one polices it. It's almost like you get a voting card when you get off the plane. It's ridiculous. Anyone can vote here. Anyone can vote here. Because, of course, it's governed by incompetent public sector, incompetent local government, largely run by Labour, who want the corrupt votes anyway. And so there's absolutely no structure, no order to this at all. I would suggest we start to, 1, practical step, postal votes have to go. 2, only British citizens should vote in a general election. Let us police that and make sure it happens. And only eligible, let us make absolutely sure that one person is voting one time. We also need to get rid of the student thing, where the students vote in 2 different places, perfectly legally. Perfectly legally. And we all know who students are voting for. I mean, Corbyn's not stupid. He might be loony left, but not stupid. He knows perfectly well. I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll promise free university to students, and then they'll vote for me twice. And he knows they can do it. And that's how he nearly sneaked through the last time, to Theresa May's shock. Theresa May thought all she had to do was not be Jeremy Corbyn. And that was pretty much the Conservative manifesto last time, wasn't it? We're not Jeremy Corbyn, vote for us. Didn't work. Didn't work, because Jeremy was telling students who vote twice that he would give them everything for free. Absolutely has to be reined in. It has to be reined in. And it's a top priority for me. It's scandalous, actually, when you think about it. It's scandalous. Complete corruption. And it means that the good people of this country are ending up with governments that they didn't even vote for. And local governments they didn't vote for. Scandalous. Has to be reined in. Top priority to me.
So the last question of the night goes to Tash.
Yeah. Thank you, Chairman. Yes, my name is Taj. I'm living in this country last 54 years. I'm an Indian Christian and born in Indian families, living for 55 years. Right, my first question is, I'm very pleased to, you have mentioned that, but the ballot book papers, which is posting there. I remember that a few years ago in Austin, there was election, was a local election, printed, the vote illegally were printed and posted by post. I'm pleased to that. Second, is there, I mentioned that the interfaith, I've been meeting on yesterday in Hall Green Church, St. Paul Church. There was a interfaith meeting was there. The Church of England Church, and I was there. They allowed to Muslim community to have a worship in the church. Whether they in masjid people, Muslim community allowed to Christian to worship in there. So this is my point is this, you must have to be concentrate to stand up there to always voice for the Christian community or the Britain. Britain is a Christian country, you must have to stick that there. Yes, thank you.
Yes, no, I completely agree. And there are the Church of England and the Catholic Church are so complicit in this Islamization of Europe that it's quite unbelievable and quite staggering. One wonders what motivates them, but it's across the board. And the Archbishop of Canterbury and the Pope, successive popes, have told us that we have to welcome, however, countless numbers of refugees from across the world. We've had several incidents of churches and cathedrals in this country allowing Islamic worship inside. One, even in Arabic, chose a verse from the Quran which specifically disavows Jesus as the Son of God. And it was read in Arabic, so nobody quite knew what was being said. But in a Christian church here, a Muslim was offered to offer service and chose a section of the Quran which specifically denied Christianity and did so inside a Christian church while Christian leaders sat back and applauded them. I've no idea why they're doing this. I suspect these are establishment figures. They're establishment figures, and they're going along with the establishment. But I will certainly say that yes, this country was built on Christianity, on Christian values and secular values, and that's why people will say to me, "But it's either one or the other. It can't be secular and Christian." No, it can. It's both. It's been built on both, and we respect. Christianity is our culture. It's our culture. Whether we're believers or not, it's still our culture, and our culture was built on it. Christmas is our festival. Christmas is our biggest day of the year, and we love it, and it's part of us. And I've started celebrating Christmas again. I've always celebrated Christmas, but I've gotten really excited and enthusiastic about Christmas in the last few years. And it's an interesting thing that happens to people, is that when you start to take their culture away, they'll start to want it. That's certainly happening to me and to other people I know. But yes, absolutely. I mean, the Christian churches are complicit in the Islamization of Europe. They need to be called out on it. They need to be reminded that this is a Christian continent. Our heritage and our history is Christian, and we should have every right to preserve and honour that.
We'll squeeze one more in.
Just a little one.
Okay.
What's happened to the person in this country who's the defender of our faith?
Yeah, good point.
The Queen.
The Queen, what's happened to her? How do you mean?
Didn't you mention Islam and Muhammad in her Christian speech, and Charles, the defenders of our faith?
Well, Charles is going to change it, isn't he, from defender of the faith to defender of faiths. That's what he wants to do. He used an Easter message to call for more immigration, more Muslim immigration to the UK, and guilting Christians with it's what Jesus would have wanted. Yeah, I mean, apparently, I hear now that the Queen is related to Muhammad. It gets better. It gets better every day, doesn't it? You just have to laugh. You do have to laugh. But that one's one of the funniest I've seen for a while. Yeah, the Queen is a distant relative of Muhammad. And it was interesting. I saw on social media a few people commenting on that. One of them said, the royal family are fantastic shapeshifters. They can see the future and they're adapting early. I suspect that's not too crazy an idea, actually.
Listening to David Icke.
Well, no, but you know, there's an increasingly powerful Muslim lobby. No one, you know, they're not. The establishment is not going to take them on. They're afraid of them. And we saw in Paris last week as well. So a woman was arrested, or it might not have been Paris, but it was definitely France, Toulouse, I think it was. And she was arrested for wearing a niqab. And because, of course, it's illegal in France to wear a niqab. And 5 days of rioting followed. You know, damage done, money wasted. Nobody was hurt or killed, fortunately. But that's the lesson. That's what they know. That's what we know. And that's why we're so afraid. Just imagine what would happen if we really came down hard on the illegal Islamic practices. We'd have riots in the street, and the police know it. The police know it. That's why we're afraid of them. So no one's got. They're not. The establishment's not going to do anything about it. Which is why we need to get rid of them. We need to really replace the people who are running the country. Simple as that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you very much. Lovely. Thank you all very much for coming.
Just quickly sum up, and obviously thank you all for coming tonight. It's been a pleasure, and it's nice to see so many people actually out. Thank you to Anne-Marie for everything that she said and engaging with everybody. Thank you to Mo, thank you to Sam and Steve. There is one last thing I would like to do, and if everybody's willing, I'd like to see a photograph with Anne-Marie in front of this crowd. Because some people say, oh, you don't get many of these meetings, you know, you'll get one or two. This is a good turnout for a Sunday evening. So if you're all happy to stand, and we have Anne-Marie, you're standing there, Steve, Sam, if we get you in here as well, and if you'd be okay to take the photograph. And again, thank you all so much for coming along, and keep in touch. And if you've got any questions, you've got my number, and you've got the